When it comes to the Dylan Rounds case, still to this day, and when you look at future videos out there, people are questioning, why would Brenner kill Dylan Rounds? What is the motive for it? There is no reason. It's a complete waste of time and a waste of a young life and their future ahead. It's bad what's Brenner's done, and there's no true reason behind it. Questions all over the place. If people just slowed down, and we're talking about outsiders, it's kind of common sense when you think about it in some way as to why Brenner took Dylan Rounds out. If you've done your research, you've heard of the stories in the past, you've seen the red flags mentioned, it would make more sense, to be honest. And even if that wasn't present or you didn't hear of it, if you simply know about the Maryland incident before the 2000s, that would make sense as well, right? Whether you want to say it was planned or not, snap at the moment or not, seems a fair chance it was a snap by Brenner. He took it out on Dylan directly or indirectly. It can happen. It's a form of displacement. You may have anger. It's generated, caused directly by the individual you're going to take it out on or something else. But how you direct that anger and that energy within, you take it out on something or someone which causes a negative outcome, right? Now, I've already done a video before to do with motives of Brenner, but obviously YouTube, the algorithm, popularity, they're not going to watch, okay? Regular viewers will, that's great, but outsiders, majority, don't bother watching or never find the videos. So hopefully this video does come across to a wider audience, okay? I mentioned a few keywords already: Maryland, snap, a build-up or not, planned or not. I'll explain it a bit more, okay, shortly. I just want to say, first of all, welcome to those that are currently here in this live premiere. I mean, arguably, I've already done one earlier on to do with Riley Strain, which was just kind of just seeing a different case here and there, right? Just to change up a little bit, just to see what happens, right? But doing it formally by looking at the official articles, just to stay in line, you work around it or you drift apart, you think outside of the box when you have a full understanding of a case, right? If you just randomly go at it, well, it can be reckless. I'm trying to avoid that. So welcome to those that are currently here watching. Welcome to the return of people that have come from the earlier video and now watching now. That's good to see. Share your thoughts, opinions, reactions in the live chat box right hand side of the screen. If you got any comments or you want to add on, elaborate, leave your thoughts down below under this video. And you want to catch up on my recent videos, such as my earlier one, to some huge developments as it was labeled, top right corner of the screen, click on the eye symbol, you'll be able to catch up there. Down below in the comments, there's a pinned one by me with some additional links if you wish to check that out, if you get time. And I just want to say shout out to Cleo, of course, recently, shout out to Christy, of course, and as well, shout out to Skeptical for their support on the channel and the range of gifted memberships in recent time. Very good to see. I don't know if I've done a custom emoji badge for members to highlight certain individuals such as Skeptical, because I know Skeptical has shown quite a bit of support, and especially with the gifted memberships recently. I was just wondering, Skeptical, if I have created or if I have asked you, you know, about creating a custom badge to highlight yourself. I've done it with some people here and there with time. I am limited to how many badges I can create just simply because YouTube has requirements. You need so many members unlocked to then unlock a new slot for a new badge emoji. So that happens. I can't remember what requirement I'm on at this moment in time, but I'm sure I can switch and change some older emojis if they're not as popular anymore, right? If some have expired, I can replace them with new things. I'll probably do a community post elsewhere and reach out there, so it's a bit easier, okay? I'll reach out that way, Skeptical, and then if you've got any ideas, you can share your thoughts, okay? So, yeah, today, or should I say tonight, looking at the motives or just simply the reasons why James Brenner murdered Dylan Rounds. You can still say this is a theory, this is just an idea. It would have to come directly from Brenner's mouth as a confession as to why he did what he did. And then whatever he says, providing it's the truth, well, that's the facts, right? But that's not happened yet, but it could happen. considering a plea deal's already been made, he's already led authorities to where Dylan was buried at. I mean, that's most of the work done already. If he's already opened up to that extent and he's been willing to do so and cooperate, then he might as well go the full mile and get it over and done with. So there's justice for Dylan, and he gets on, moves away to a different population, but inside, locked up, instead of being on some kind of 23-hour watch, as it was highlighted by some people recently. He wants a bit more freedom, even if it is around other inmates, who knows. But, you know, I can imagine there's a lot of people out there, not who watch my channel, that are confused and don't understand why Dylan Rounds was murdered on that day. You could really simplify it and say, wrong place, wrong time for Dylan. Whatever Brenner was going through on that day, or what he felt like, and with the interruption by Dylan, considering Brenner had not seen him for a few months or so, at least 6 weeks because of custom farm work, being startled by Dylan's presence, maybe frustrated, annoyed by it, yeah, and then taking it out on Dylan. And people could still say, but why? Why would you do that? Surely if you had a high tolerance level and someone came along, you just simply think, oh, here we go again. But you wouldn't take it directly out on the person physically or do anything to harm them. But we're looking at Brenner, okay? Brenner can be considered a dangerous individual. Now, once again, a lot of people out there may not have seen the court documents and the crimes Brenner's been involved with in the past, okay? I can't list them all off the top of my head, okay? But the usage of firearms in the past, possession of them when he's not supposed to, threatening behaviour, aggravated assault, physical violence, right? It's not a good look, is it? If you learn all about that individual, would you want to be surrounded by that person? Probably not. But because of the age of Dylan Rounds at the time, maybe Dylan felt that he was not invincible, but not the target in the eyes of Brenner. Like, because of the age Dylan was, he may have thought, oh, Brenner's not going to harm me. He can't harm me. You know, he works for me at some point. Kind of got on well in the past. I guess Dylan has had some disagreements with Brenner in the past, but kind of shrugged it off, kind of like how he told Justin, even though Justin didn't like Brenner, as Justin said in some interviews here and there, says a lot. But, you know, with Justin Rounds, the father being older and having more experience in the work field and in the presence of those type of individuals, Justin will pick up on it quicker than someone like Dylan, who could be considered as naive just simply down to the age factor. That is a big factor, that naivety, and that applies to Dylan Rounds, okay? Dylan can probably still defend himself in ways, but in certain situations where you wouldn't expect to anticipate it, and if it is a snap moment, I don't think Dylan would be prepared. You got to take in mind, if it's never happened before, you wouldn't be expecting it to happen now, right? Would you do your background research on an individual if you were working for them or with them or living near them, whatever it may be? Would you do that? Probably not. Only when you think there's room for suspicion within that individual. When you do get suspicious or you don't trust someone, you might research into them out of interest. If you came across someone online, you might do research from the get-go simply because it's all at the fingertips, and the factor of not truly knowing them because they're behind a screen, that would be another way of why you would research. But in real life, in person, when you see people for what they supposedly, are, it doesn't always quite work out like that. As said, you might meet people in real life, oh, it's the better approach. BS. You'll see people's dark side online, and as bad as that is, you see it much quicker and much sooner than in real life, because in real life, people are more cowardly, right? People will only show their dark side when you are vulnerable or when you've got your back turned, okay? You see it online, no holds barred, any place, any time. It's over and done with quick, right? With this being a real life situation between Dylan and Brenner, some form of interaction, dysfunctional at the time, there wouldn't have been room for anticipating it, right? Now, let's just focus back on Brenner, the main individual, the one charged, responsible for the death of Dylan Rounds and desecration, okay? Outsiders, you want to know a bit about Brenner? Well, make sure to check my channel out, previous videos where we look at the court documents and the charges on him. But one such example was Maryland, in which at the time in court, it was reduced from a intent to kill to a malicious wounding, right? Malicious wounding, shot in the leg. Was it planned to hurt the individual, planned to kill the individual? Who knows, but it was reduced to a lesser sentence and severity of the crime and the charge, right? But it was because of a work dispute. Do you see the patterns? A work dispute in the past in Maryland. Brenner having a go at someone or some people, then retaliating with shooting a firearm at that person and hurting them. If Brenner was capable of hurting someone back then with the usage of a firearm and then threatening people in between over time, and then also causing trouble elsewhere and getting into fights, physical altercations, aggravated assault, and using a lawn chair on somebody, a much older individual, Brenner, no holds barred. If he feels like it, he will do it. If he loses control or snaps, that's what happens. If he feels like he's been spoken to in the wrong way, he'll hold that against the person and threaten them, or it'll wear on him in his mind, and it will, build that negativity, that hatred towards someone, right? Brenner has hurt people in the past. Brenner has shot people in the past. So is there any surprise as to why Brenner did what he did to Dylan, right? You could say, but why Dylan? Why that situation? Okay, Brenner is an unstable individual. Brenner can lose control. Brenner can snap at any point. Well, that clears the situation up already, in a way, right? If Brenner can snap at random times or lose control, or the anger takes control of him and he takes it out on the person and it can lead to harming someone, just that this time round, who he was taking it out on, Dylan Rounds, and how he dealt with Dylan was more fatal than in Maryland before the 2000s, right? So back then, it was a wounding of an individual, but originally possibly with the intent to kill them, right? With the Dylan Rounds situation, many years later, it depends where Dylan was shot and if Dylan was shot, okay? We've got to take that into consideration. With the time-lapse footage of cleaning a firearm, we're assuming that Dylan was shot. We have to see what the autopsy report says, but we know Dylan Rounds was killed and his body was found because Brenner, the evidence against him, of course, and then him revealing the location afterwards, right? So let's put it metaphorically, can't remember the word or the term used. So on the stipulation that Dylan was shot, well, if it's happened in the past and it was out of losing control and a work dispute, well, the same could have happened here, and it did, right? If it wasn't being shot, but it was more physical, or a melee blunt item was used, blunt force impact, well, then it just links to the aggravated assault of like what Brenner did in 2021. Either way, whether it be before the 2000s or in 2021 or even before that, on and off, Brenner had shown forms of physical violence, a form of intent to hurt someone and to take his anger out on that individual directly or indirectly. It's happened before, it's happened again, and it's happened again. Repeated offences. He's not learned, he's not changed. So with the Dylan Rounds case, do you expect anything any different? But why on that day, and why with Dylan Rounds? Well, one factor, Dylan, wrong place, wrong time. I don't think Brenner discriminates against certain target individuals. If Brenner comes across anyone who might annoy him and trigger him, Brenner will take it out on that person. So Brenner isn't just picking on Dylan. Brenner has picked on a range of different people with time. So there's no biasness there, right? The violence is consistent throughout time with Brenner. The snap mentalities have been present before in the past, right? And as for holding a grudge or having some distaste towards someone, such as Dylan Rounds, that is a background motivator and a breaking point factor as to why it all tied in. You think of some kind of chemical disaster, or, you forming a potion and you add all the ingredients together. How would we lay it out? Well, you got Brenner, you've got Dylan, and in between it, you got the characteristics with Brenner. Reckless, violent, aggressive, and can snap at times and hold grudges. and shows forms of jealousy and hatred towards people, and does not like the power dynamics when it comes to differences of ages, such as when a person of higher power orders that individual about, and the one that's ordering the individual about is younger than the worker, the employee. Yeah, employee. Okay? Dylan Rounds, what factors does he have? Wrong place, wrong time, maybe a bit in a rush on the day, 28th, maybe a bit noisy, maybe a little bit reckless. It depends. It's been said in the past that Dylan Rounds has been critiqued by Brenner for how he's handled farming equipment. We saw a post by Justin Rounds saying how at times Dylan Rounds may have accidentally broke something but kept it a secret, and his brother held that secret. Okay? It's not done with intent, but the age Dylan was at the time, okay? Not fully experienced as the likes of older farmers, making mistakes along the way and handling equipment. But obviously, if Dylan Rounds was around long enough, he would learn, he would improve, and just it would be natural, normal development. Things happen, it is what it is when you do grow up, right? But besides that, even if it is normal behavior, in the eyes of Brenner, it triggers him, right? Take in mind the motivating impacts and factors. Dylan, somewhat successful at the age he was, much more successful than probably Brenner in a lifetime, maybe. Or maybe that's going a bit too far. Could just at least say maybe at the age Dylan Rounds was at the time, Dylan doing more than someone like Brenner. At the end of the day, it's not a competition in life, but in the eyes of Brenner didn't like the idea that Dylan had more than what Brenner had back then. It can happen. It's understandable. To lash out on someone violently and physically, probably a bit too far, right? But, you got the jealousy there building, that there's a much younger individual who's got more, who's done more, and Brenner didn't have that back then. Let's just put it that way. Did Brenner have to work harder than Dylan for certain things? I don't know. I really don't know that. It seems like Dylan put in a lot of effort, but it just so happened to be his passion, and he enjoyed what he did. He enjoyed his work. He saw it as a hobby activity. It just happened to be his job and part of him. So really, he went all in with it. He put in a lot of effort. Maybe Brenner is jealous of that. Maybe Brenner doesn't have, or didn't have at the time, the same amount of dedication as Dylan did. So that jealousy building up, crossing on with the jealousy of critiquing everything that Dylan does, such as the farming and the equipment and the handling of it. How could he? Oh, you got to be careful here. You got to be careful of that. Maybe Dylan would learn naturally as he grew older, but Brenner having that jealousy, deep-rootedness because of what Dylan has and all of it, the excuse or the line Brenner could use is, oh, in my time I had much less, but I was careful how I used it, whatever. That deep-rooted jealousy, building with time. And, why people would say, yeah, but why? Or where's proof? You look back at some interviews in the past, you got Justin Rounds talking about it, I believe with one of the news channels, but also with Heavy D, talking about how back in 2021, I think it was, winter time, Don Hatley, Brenner at Justin Rounds' shop with a truck brought on over. I don't know if it was Dylan's grain truck or not, but a truck. Dylan present, but in a different room at the time. And basically with CCTV surveillance or audio footage picked up, Justin Rounds in a different room was able to pick up on the conversation with Brenner and Don Hatley. And basically the conversation in summary was Brenner critiquing and having a go at Dylan and jealousy showing. And that's even what Justin Rounds said and summarised from what he heard from that conversation, right? So with jealousy, there can be hatred and anger that builds up. You don't like someone, or you don't like the idea that someone is better off than you or has more than you. It can be frustrating. It can send you over the edge. And if you can get triggered, or you can snap easily and take it out on that person, I guess that's what Brenner did. And take in mind, Brenner could have the mentality of, I want to take everything away from you to remind you of the situation I'm in. Sometimes that can be a factor as well. Sometimes when you get like the mass shooters out there, they might not have this, they might not have that, but they're in the environment of what they're reminded of what they don't have, but everyone does have. So they want everyone else to feel as this individual, this one person does without. So by taking it out on a person or taking things away from them, nearby, close or loved ones or items, responsibilities, taking it away, you want that person to feel the same way you do. Negative, lost, you haven't got much. Brenner the additional factor with Brenner is how he's spoken to now. Maybe there wasn't much conversation on the day of the 28th because it happened so quick, but at least in other times, such as 2020, I think, or before that, with Justin Rounds having a conversation with James Brenner. It was to do with some pigs being transported and placed opposite a house of grandparents, or Justin's grandparents, or Sam, to family, and it just was done without Justin Rounds' permission or much talking through. So that kind of annoyed Justin, and he had it out with Brenner. And then afterwards, Brenner didn't like the way he was spoken to by Justin, whether it be the power dynamics, or just they don't like being spoken down to, or they just don't like being talked in a certain way. Brenner got triggered and then threatened to kill Dylan's father. Dylan was there by Brenner to hear it all, and then Dylan told his father Justin about it. Pretty much a red flag, right? So you look back in the past, you got James Brenner shooting someone in the leg. First, it was seen as an attempt to kill, but then reduced down to wounding, but still. Was the intent there? Was the anger? Yeah, from the looks of it. And then you got the other niggly bits in between. And then you've got, a few years ago, with Dylan's father, of all people, being threatened by Brenner, that Brenner was going to kill Justin Rounds. Okay, it might have just been words, empty words. It didn't lead to anything in the end. But although Justin may have not been killed by Brenner, Dylan was, though. As I said, when you get these red flags, maybe some action needs to be taken, but it wasn't. Justin Rounds did say he didn't like Brenner, and what more could Justin do with Dylan being an adult? With Dylan's age and naivety, but independence too, conflicting with one another, yeah, maybe it clouded his judgment, but there's only so much Dylan Rounds could do at the time based on his age, his awareness, and lack of experience. But with time, he probably would have been more cautious and everything, but that didn't happen because the one time, you can't say it's Dylan's fault, but one time a mistake was made or your guard was lowered, there was consequences behind it, and you can't learn from it. Dylan can't, because his life was taken away, so it's not possible. So you understand what Brenner can be like, a loose cannon. And when things go wrong, or when something annoys him, how he responds back, all he seems to know is violence or confrontation, right? Taking it out on someone, from the looks of it. It's been repeated with time. So you add all that in, you add in the fact of Dylan Rounds, wrong place, wrong time, on that one day when Brenner may have already been in a mood. You add in the other stories in the background from what Brenner said to Justin when Justin and the parents, Candice Cooley and Justin, came on down on the 30th onwards. And Brenner basically said, oh yeah, Dylan came on down and he broke the horse gate, which is in the Grangeshed property. If that's truly the case, if it is, well, that could have been what triggered Brenner, right? Whether a horse was in the grain shed at the time or not, if Dylan was reversing the grain truck into the shed and was in a rush, and Brenner had that horse gate locked or closed going into the grain shed property, and Dylan wasn't aware of it, because take in mind, Dylan's been away for 6 weeks custom farming. Brenner hasn't seen Dylan for that length of time. Brenner wasn't anticipating Dylan to come back on that specific day, let's just say. So Brenner would have locked up or may have made changes along the way so that when Dylan Rounds came on down later, both weren't anticipating the changes and arrivals of things and people. So with Dylan possibly being unaware and accidentally breaking something, if there was noise or a clatter, a commotion, it probably would have alerted Brenner. Brenner getting defensive, high alert, in a mood already or not. Then realizing, oh, it's Dylan Rounds, and then that deep hatred and jealousy, long-term building back up, right? See, a person can snap just like that randomly, but in other situations, a person can snap with ongoing long-term hatred or energy building up inside of them, in which the smallest of events which happens next is enough to make them strike and snap, right? It's like, even when people may have a breakdown, emotional breakdown, or just end up crying or upset, right? A person could have had lots of bad things happen to them over time for a long period, right? And then something small scale has only happened just recently. Maybe someone made a little reference or made a little joke, and then this individual has spiraled out into a deep depression, broken down, suicidal, whatever. And in the eyes of onlookers or outsiders, be thinking, how can such a small action and a small joke make someone react in such a bad way like that and have a breakdown? How is that even possible? Because if there's already deep-rooted things implanted from the past experiences and stuff, which have taken a toll on them inside, the next thing that happens, even if it is small, can be enough to tip someone over the edge. So with the situation with Brenner having some kind of long-term distaste towards Dylan Rounds, maybe not enough at the time to warrant Brenner killing Dylan, but at a later point, Brenner needed, or subconsciously needed, a reason to take his anger out on Dylan. And then came the 28th of May, and if Dylan was reckless, or if Dylan accidentally broke anything or caused the noise or commotion, that's what triggered Brenner the most. And on top, if Brenner has ever felt or experienced intruders in the past, and instant thought or reaction was, right, must aim a firearm at them, let's just say as an example, territorial defensiveness, well, that could be another factor too, right? I said, these are factors, these are ideas. We'll just have to wait until Brenner speaks himself. But to be honest, you can use common sense to get a rough idea or an understanding of why Brenner took Dylan Rounds out. Was it deeply personal? To an extent, possibly. But considering Brenner has hurt other people in the past, it's not just a one-sided grudge or just like any form of discrimination. Brenner, if he's in a certain mood and certain things happen to him, or he's in the presence of someone he doesn't like, it doesn't always go too well. And it's happened back then, it's happened in between, and it's happened now. Well, speaking of 2022 at least. So when you look back, at least for me, it doesn't surprise me, okay? In the beginning with Brenner in the Dylan Rounds case, without knowing Brenner's past history, well, it was a bit uncertain, right? But with now knowing, it's pretty self-explanatory, okay? Some people could still argue and say, okay, but if there is a motive, let's just say, does it come down to a snap, a change in behavior and mood, or was it planned long term? I don't think it was planned long term. I think what was planned was in the process of it all happening and how it all unfolded after the death of Dylan. So having to bury Dylan's body. At least from what I know of, I've not seen any documents or any official reports of Brenner killing anyone in the past, but I guess arguably he came close to killing people in the past when it came to like the Maryland shooting, and if there was any other assaults or violence in between from then till now, right? Close calls. So on this occasion, when Brenner did actually kill an individual for the first time, then more action was taken. Oh, now I have to dispose of someone. Now I have to think ahead and plan things out, even if it is done in a lazy way, right? If Brenner hasn't killed anyone in the past, he's only hurt people, well, he's not had to clean up after himself the same way with Dylan Rounds. So it's the first time for Brenner as well. The only interesting factor you could consider or ask Brenner if you were in a situation was, how did Brenner feel killing someone for the first time in his life? Was he bothered? Was he shocked? Was he surprised? Or was he happy? You know, if in Maryland that was intent to kill, but it was unsuccessful, maybe he wanted to, you know, avenge himself from that failure back then, right? I do lean more towards Brenner snapping on the day, but I do understand that it was planned following on the death of Dylan. So the disposing of items, that was planned out to a small extent. If it was not planned, then nothing would have happened. There was an intention behind, I must clear up after myself, or at least make an attempt. And to be honest, it probably was a poor attempt in the end when you look back, but there was still intent as a form of desecration, a personal choice there. Was there a choice to kill Dylan Rounds? Was there any other way around it? At the time, maybe no choice, non-negotiable, because it heated the moment, seeing red, the snap, right? Loses control, reckless, dangerous, harmful. Dylan caught in the crossfire literally. Dylan being the only one there at the time. Would Brenner have reacted any different if someone else was on site at the time, like Don Hatley or Kurt Wadsworth? Would Brenner have not taken it out on Dylan to the same extent because of witnesses being present? Would it have just been a verbal altercation? I wonder. We'll never know because that scenario never happened, from the looks of it at least. Okay? But whilst in the moment of killing Dylan, a snap, many factors beforehand bubbling under for quite some time, and then this one factor on the day of Dylan's presence, unalerted, unexpected, was what drove Brenner over the edge, right? Something must have happened on site for Brenner to be triggered by it. Triggered the snap, and at the time Brenner reminded of everything that's happened in the past as well, boiling on over, finalising the snap. Hopefully that makes sense to people. If you wanted visuals on screen, I've done previous videos in the past. Just wanted to do it right now, this, looking back. And I just hope this video reaches people out there who aren't as informed on the case as some of us are with what we've heard from the parents, from the news reports and the official statements, articles, and of course the court documents. Because when you piece it all together, it's no surprise what Brenner did. Was it a matter of time? Possibly. Because even if Dylan Rounds wasn't there on the 28th, okay, he could have been 2 years on from now, and 2 years on from now, he could have been killed. Could you say it was inevitable? It was going to happen at some point eventually? All I would say is, the longer you spend around someone who is dangerous, the more chances you will eventually get caught up in a crossfire with them. And it can backfire, it can go wrong, right? So the more time, the longer you spend in a war-torn country, a form of conflict, well, the higher the chances your life expectancy going down, and at some point, you're being taken out. Obviously, you still get the unlucky moments where you might just meet some person once in your life and that one-time encounter goes wrong and you're killed by them. That can happen too. But if you're like Dylan and you're around certain individuals with criminal records for some time, you could argue it's only a matter of time, especially if you know or you're aware of what Brenner's done in the past. And Brenner even threatening Dylan's own father, it doesn't sound too good. Surely you wouldn't want to be around that type of person. But with Dylan Rounds, his age, naivety, it's understandable why there wasn't total awareness, I guess. But he was still an adult, so he could make his own choices, arguably speaking. As I said, I just wanted to add these little factors and elements in. I'm aware that regular viewers will probably know all this or remember it, but take in mind that I do make videos for new people, new viewers as well. That's why I've got to try and balance it out with how I word things. Okay? Was there anything else to highlight or identify? I don't think so at this moment in time, but I think we'll just leave it there. As I said, if you have just joined, rewind to the start to fully understand this. You want to catch up on my earlier video, top right corner of the screen, click on that. And yeah, so thanks for watching. See you next time. Goodbye. Good night for now.